Welcome, everybody, to the next edition of Pack Talking with Carly Trimble, my partner, my girlfriend, my amazing marketer for Reward Calm, and an entrepreneur to the bone, a singer, a delighter, a shaman. I don't know. There's all kinds of things we can say about this Carly Trimble, and an amazing dog trainer, horse trainer, people trainer, all kinds of things. So yeah, we're gonna get into it, and yeah, welcome to Pack Talking.
Thank you.
It's awesome to have you, buddy.
Yeah.
You forgot really good friend of Benjamin Austin.
Oh yeah, and friend of the podcast, people like Lynn Boki and Todd Langston and Art and Angela. You're friends with everybody here, so yeah, we appreciate you, and welcome.
Thank
you. Can you tell us about your origin story and maybe your first dog or so? And of course, we have Lena here. This is the dog we have now. Tell us your origin story, Carly, and how you got into dogs and all
that. So I wanted to be an animal trainer since the age of 5. I started off in my kindergarten graduation holding up a picture of me training Free Willy. And we lived in Chicago, so there were not a plethora of orcas. So my parents were like, well, we have to get her into something. And I started bringing dog books into the car with my parents anytime because I'd have a captive audience. And I would just start reading these books to them and tell them why we needed a dog and teaching them about dog breeds. And finally, after 2 years of that, my mom said that she couldn't hear the dog talk one more time. So they caved and they got me my first standard poodle. Which really was the start of all of this. I started showing her when I was 11, and I almost felt like I was cheating. I didn't realize how intelligent the standard poodle was. I was just a kid. The only reason we ended up with a standard poodle is because she didn't shed. But I mean, she almost came speaking English. So I titled her really quickly. All the judges said that I had a lot of talent and I needed to do this professionally. And I kindly, I think, told them at like 15, thank you so much, but I was going to be a horse trainer. Which then I went on to do, but still somehow circled back to this. So I guess there was some fortuitousness to it.
It's awesome.
Nice.
I didn't know your first dog was a poodle.
Yeah. Standard poodle, Shayna.
Shayna, dang it.
Yeah.
Good name.
Yeah.
And then tell us how you transitioned into horses and that whole world.
So, I mean, I started riding when I was 8 years old. So I actually was riding before I even got my first dog. And I just loved animals. I would become friends with people, even like if the girl wasn't a very nice girl, but if she had a lot of animals, that's how I picked my friends, was by the amount of animals I would be exposed to when I'd go over to their house. So I just wanted to be around animals all the time. And my mom would drop me off in the morning at the farm. I didn't even own a horse at the time. I was like 10 years old and I would be there all day. And everybody there at the time was getting off the track thoroughbreds. That was kind of the new and hot thing to do because they were inexpensive and they were usually pretty young by the time they retired from the track. But they were nuts because all they were taught to do was run in only one direction. So they didn't steer, they didn't stop, they didn't do a lot of things well. And I was so hungry at that time to ride and to be around animals. I didn't care about any self-preservation. And so I would be there. Nobody could ride these horses. These older adults that bought these horses were afraid. And I said, I'll get on your horse. So this went on for a few years until, again, my parents figured out what was going on. And they're like, okay, before she dies, we need to buy her a safe horse. So they bought me my first horse at 14.
Nice.
So, yeah, my dad had a little sign on the door that said, on the horse's stall, that said for sale, crossed out, new owner, Carly Trimble, in my true dad fashion.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that horse still alive?
She's not. No, actually, I sold her when I was 18. And I remember we bought her for $5,000, which, like, in that barn, because everybody was getting off the track thoroughbreds, that was like, woo, I had like the really fancy horse. And then I remember I sold her, I think 3 years later for $8,000. And I just remember thinking, like, oh, wow, I almost doubled. Like, I was like so proud of myself. But yeah, she passed away like at 10. She died kind of early, but she had a great life. So.
Sorry, I was just wondering about that because some horses live like 40 years, don't they?
They can live up to 30. She died really early at 10. So, I mean, she could still technically be alive, but no, she had a fluke colic and unfortunately died. So that's usually when they go young.
Tell us how you transitioned into horse training from just being an advocate of, or not an advocate, but an enthusiast of horses, into how you transitioned into training and eventually selling horses.
Well, so for my first training job, I was 17 years old when I started teaching. And, at 17, you don't really have enough experience under your belt to compete with the more seasoned trainers. So I kind of had to find another angle that I would be able to get access to these clients that were already there. So I actually started studying Pat Pirelli, which is horse psychology. And none of the show horse trainers were interested in it because there's no like money to be made going to shows to show off your horsemanship. But these women, they couldn't even walk their horse in from the pasture. They could hardly get the saddle on them. The horse is biting and kicking at them when they're grooming. And they're like, yeah, well, when we're in the show ring, the horse is great. But all the other time that we're spending with our horse sucks. So they started hiring me on the side and then started enjoying their time with their horse so much. Like a lot of them actually stopped showing. It caused a lot of upheaval.
Was that like a pressure and release type of training too? I mean, yeah. I'm sure that was the backbone of it all, right?
So yeah, I would say like the biggest aha thing that Caesar ever said to me was he looked at me and he goes, "How do you not know all of this already? You trained horses." And when he said that, I literally was like, oh my goodness. Like it was the biggest, like, and all horse training is pressure and release. I shouldn't say all. They're starting to do a little bit with using clickers and marking, but that's like maybe less than 5%.
Some would say everything is pressure and release.
Everything is pressure and release. But the basis
Who would say that?
Lynn Boki, yeah.
She's actually taking Lynn Boki's class right now, Beyond the Dog. So that's why she's definitely well aware of the Lynn Boki effect.
We're talking about a lot of pressure, Ben.
A lot of pressure and releasing and all that.
Oh yeah, perspectives and everything, I'm sure. Yeah. But anyways, sorry to interrupt you there.
No, it was just a really cool thing though, because it gave the horse an opportunity to respond to less pressure. So I would say that was really kind of the niche of Pat Pirelli was this idea of, in general, like horse training, it's so much compliance, right? It's like do this or if, and people think they're these 1,200-pound animals, so they can take it, but they're actually more sensitive. Most of them are more sensitive than most dogs because they're prey. So they have to have that extra sensitivity, right? So that they aren't taken down by a predator, where dogs don't even think as much that way. So even though they're large, they have a higher sensitivity. So when we started like whispering to them, right, that kind of became like the kitschy phrase for a while.
Who coined that?
Started. Well, I think the first horse whisper they considered, I think it was Monty Roberts.
You ever seen that movie, Horse Whisperer? Great movie.
It's a great movie. Yeah. It is a really great movie.
Actually, not that movie.
You do? Of course I do. Yeah. I love that movie. Yeah. And that kind of was like the opening, like, or the exposure of like people starting to think a little different.
Absolutely.
Was that movie. So
isn't that so funny though, that they had to labor that we still can't get away from like the logical point of view of it all, where it's that, oh, he has to be talking to that horse or has to be talking to that dog, and they can't just see past what they have been doing Yeah, it's going back to that. I think the word like whisperer or even dog psychology, I just don't feel like it's a fitting word for actually what people are doing with horses or with dogs. Psychology, I guess you could call it, but I don't even think that's a accurate term. But anyways,
But I mean, I like the idea of highlighting the whisper because it helps you remember that they can hear a whisper, and I feel like with horses and with dogs in general, the first thing that people go right to is touch, right? And if you look at either horses or dogs in herds or packs, the last thing that they do is touch to communicate. And usually when we are communicating with either animal, the first line of communication is touch. And that's not natural to either animal.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I like that idea spinoff you did where it's a whisper, it's a better way of looking at it, I would say.
yeah.
Good.
So continue us on your journey. So you're starting to kind of do learn from like Pat Pirelli's influence. Is it via the internet or?
Oh, Pat Pirelli had this on lock. Oh my gosh. Talk about an amazing system. Somebody should do this with dogs. That's a $1 million idea. So he had these systems where you would get this box and it had all the tools in it, like the natural rope halter, the carrot stick. That was his big thing, right? So instead of a whip, he was calling it a carrot stick because it was a gentler method. And then he had levels. So he came up with these games that you'd have to play with your horse and be able to demonstrate. So, for instance, it would be like teaching your horse to get comfortable in closed spaces, right? So you start really wide and then you keep making it closer and closer. And, the pressure builds, right? So the horse doesn't want to move through as much. So like that would be an example of one of the games. And then once you're like, okay, now I can get my horse to move within, 4 feet, then you could get tested for these games. So then people that didn't want to show their horses, they still had something that they could work towards. And get certified in. And it gave people goals and, things that do with their horses and connect and bond with their horses. So I just studied the system and then taught all of the games. And the clients thought it was amazing.
I'm sure it's awesome. It's awesome.
So by studying these horses and learning from them, you started to learn about their like palm formation and their movement and certain things that kind of help you distinguish among dogs. Like if a dog has some sort of limp or something that you kind of you've learned from horses and you're applying it to dogs. This kinesiology type of
the physiology,
the physiology and kinesiology. Can you explain or express how the similarities and how it helps you to like be a better trainer?
So I think that in the dog world overall, it's something that is overlooked often. In the horse world, we're always looking for it, right? I used to buy and sell high dollar horses. So not only would I have to see if there was like an actual lameness in the moment, I also had to be able to predict the future a little bit of that horse and its ability. So if I'm watching how it's moving as a 4-year-old, I need to be able to see that, okay, so that movement's okay as long as it's doing 4 or 5-year-old level stuff. But when it's 8, 9, 10, if it's moving like that because of just the way it's built or whatever, it's going to become really difficult for the horse to perform the more upper level movements or to stay sound in those upper level movements. So that's kind of where I developed the really sharp eye for it. And also with the horses, we immediately always, well, if you are a good horsewoman or good horseman, whenever a horse starts acting up, especially if it's kind of out of the blue, we immediately go to physical pain. We're immediately have the vet out. We're immediately looking like what isn't moving right. We've got the hoof testers out. We're checking all the ligaments and everything. And I feel like with dogs, it's not as much of a thought. We don't think so much about what's going on physically with the dog. So now when I see dogs, even if they're 1 or 2, and I'll see like at that age, they're starting to even get a little bit of a sway back. Well, that's probably because there's an issue in their hind end that they're not stepping underneath their body and using their core to carry the weight. They're just pushing out with their hips because they're not that strong. Well, again, the dog's 1 or 2, it's not going to look lame or hurt today. But when that dog's 5, 6, 7, 8, it's going to start having more issues down the line. So this is where I wish that people would be a little bit more aware of this and then start to do like some physical therapy, get into some of the fit pause stuff and be like, okay, what's weak in my dog and how do I prevent my dog from needing, injections and living on all these dogs? Like I swear every dog's like living on gabapentin now. Right. And I feel like that can be mitigated quite a bit if we had a little bit more of a front end awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely, it's more about the you're talking about prevention rather than intervention,
Right.
which is something that we do with behavior all the time as well. As if we're getting ahead of the behavior, then we're going to definitely get ahead of the problem. And same thing with the physiology of the dog or horse or whatever it is. If you're able to spot ahead of time things that might be problems down the line, it really, I think, it makes you so much better of a dog trainer even. And just the fact that people don't even realize that, maybe the dog is injured and that's why they're acting out, or, you know what I mean? Like, people don't realize that as much, I think, and trainers need to become more aware of it. And I think that's one of your superpowers. And I really admire that in you.
Oh, that's sweet. Like that.
Ben, with you being in the Midwest, do you feel like
You go ahead.
no, I mean, because I was a horse trainer in the Midwest, right? I spent a lot of time in areas very similar to where you live and where, you run your business. And I feel like California, we are a little lucky because we're all pretty health conscious and
Yeah.
we are a little extra aware, right? And of course, with our horses too, they're way more high dollar. So people are way more concerned. But in general, like, do people think that way, or do you feel like there's even more of a out by
There,
you?
there is, and to be fair, even for myself, I think I went to a dog's house today that was a Boston Terrier. One of the first things that they said is that the dog had a fused vertebrae, and the dog was there for I'm here for the dog had human aggression, and I they said something about the vertebrae, this or that, and but they also said the dog runs around and plays and loves to play tug and all these other things, and I just asked them, so what do you guys want me to do today? Do you guys want to just talk about dog psychology and I can just kind of give you some ideas of things to work on with that dog? But I think in the reality though, with I could just hear the dog barking. We were within the vicinity of it. I just knew that dog needed it actually just needed the right form of guidance. And really it was like, to me, it was just a really simple fix. And I could tell before I even brought that dog out, I wanted to cover this situation right here. And they went to the doctor, they got x-rays, they could see the fused spine, but they really weren't gonna do anything as health to prepare to heal the dog, right? So I asked them, like, what do you guys want to do? Do you guys want to try to fix it today or work on it today? And that's going to involve the dog probably trying to potentially bite me, and us just going through that process. Um, and That's funny that you guys brought that up today, because I definitely think of that. The dog didn't look like he was in pain at all. The dog had looked like he had a messed up gait. He looked like he was crip walking around in his back legs. But the dog looked fine. He was 10 months old. And I say that because, well, I say the whole situation, and the dog ended up loving me, and it was a super easy, great client, super easy dog. It's a situation that the veterinarian told to put the dog down. The dog was super easy. So yes, I, I also had that dog named Decker that got ran over when he was a puppy. He had that titanium femur. Um, So yeah, I do think about that with dogs and it creating behaviors. But to me, what I always feels like it's like the camel or the or
Chicken or the egg.
the straw that broke the camel's back. Is that what it was?
There's
Where
a straw.
where where everything else behaviorally led up to the injury or an ailment from the dog didn't help with the behavior, just exposed it quicker, like a nerve. So I don't know. That's what I think about it. I think there's situations that are different than the two I mentioned, but yeah, I don't know. I don't sit with much experience with dogs doing something with them being in pain and me not being able to fix it, right? The behavior. Not to say the dog not can't be in pain, but I've never, I've never seen that yet. So I can't say that. I could say there's probably been several dogs that I've seen with aggression that were also, from a health standpoint, physically, probably were discomfort, not being walk, overweight, um, you know, you can go on and on. But yeah, it's an interesting topic you brought up. I was thinking about that when Bobby started to mention that, about that dog. But yeah, I don't know. Interesting topic though.
Well, recently we had a dog named Ophelia. We actually had her on the podcast, if you remember. She was the brindle dog that basically was on here. And she has recently gone to fosters with intention to adopt. And she was doing this thing where she would kind of turn around real quick and look at her tail. And it basically like, and then she would get kind of mouthy afterwards if you wanted to like try to touch her in that area. And she was not the kind of dog that would really be a mouthy dog. So what we ended up finding out was she had, what was it, Carly?
She had a anal gland issue. It was kind of an infection, but then it got like where it got really large, and then I think like some fecal matter even got in there, which then caused the infection. Like she was born with like too large of anal glands, basically.
Yeah, that's
And, yeah, and so she's just uncomfortable. But then it kind of makes them less tolerant for everything.
yeah.
And, if you think about being in pain yourself, like I can't learn when I'm in pain, right? I don't deal with things as well. My thresholds are way, way lower. So like, I think, and I see it as much in the dog, probably more in the horse world than I do in the dog world,
Mm-hmm.
because we put a lot more wear and tear on the horses, but
It may be because they're prey too, they're a little bit more sensitive to just more sensitive than it's probably just general.
Pain, maybe even.
I definitely think dogs are more stoic. So therefore, yeah, they definitely have a higher pain tolerance. And so I think that it takes that much more of a trained and an aware eye, right, and understanding to catch it in the canine species versus the equine species.
Yeah.
But then what I also see too, on the other flip side, right, is the dog has some form of cancer. So then there's no rules, boundaries, or regulations anymore because the dog has some form of cancer. And it's like, okay, well, the dog's still alive. The dog's still running, right? Like the dog still is healthy enough to be an offender, right? Yeah. Of some type. And now they've just made this excuse. And then in that case, they're doing a disservice to the dog. So the dog doesn't know he has cancer.
See, that's what I kind of think what happened to my client is that something happened to that dog at one point where they just changed how they dealt with it. Mm-hmm. And he was the dog that had that little injury. And dude, if you guys saw this dog and how it behaved and the energy that it had, you're like, this dog looks completely fine. Like right now, what he's doing, he doesn't look like he's hurt or this or that. But it was a funny way of them looking at it though, because he'd be in a situation, the dog would love me, and it was like the 2 hour mark, towards the end of the console, and I was playing with the dog, and at one point I came close, and he, because he was excited, he kind of got a little back into that old state of mind, and I just stopped. My hand was like right there in front of him. I just stopped, didn't have to touch him or anything, and the dog just snapped out of it. They're like, he just liked you. I was like, no, he still likes me. I was like, he's not he doesn't think logically. I was like, this is a dog that's just based off of instincts. His brain's really excited, and he's going back to what has worked for him. So yeah, that was an interesting thing though, because right away I was like, with that dog, I was like, well, let's see how he feels when we bring him out, and then that dog looked really crippled, or it looked like it was in pain. They never hear it cry. I asked several questions, but always kind of conflicting thing. And today you're kind of you're in a divide in a path here. All right, what do you guys want me to do? Do you want me to deal with the behavior, or are you guys really concerned about this injury?
I feel like you really can't deal with a behavior if a dog is in pain or has some sort of issue like that.
Yeah.
I think
If
that's
the
the
dog was in pain,
one way.
absolutely not.
Right.
Yeah, they never see the dog in pain. They play with it. They tug with it. It's just a long time ago. They said they was playing rough and he somehow compressed a vertebrae or something like that. Long time
Some
ago.
trauma happened somewhere.
Yeah, but he just looked like a not very well bred Boston Terrier. Is what he looked like.
That's another thing that Carly is passionate about. Go
He
ahead.
was brown though. I will say that he was brown.
He's a liver.
Yeah, I was like, I've never seen a liver Boston. I've seen Merles and all different kinds of them, but all different types of Merles and black. I guess I've seen a black Boston Terrier.
Well, I have a question for you, Carly. Talk to us about how you got into protection sport and whatnot.
Lena's leaving.
It's okay. We're all good with Lena. It's just moving around.
Hey, look, real quick, we'll snap one out of Mila. Oh,
Yeah, let's do some
there
Mila.
goes my camera. Sweet Mila.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
it's all good.
We'll clean that up. We'll clean that up.
No cleaning necessary. So, explain to us how you got into the protection sport world, and how that has influenced your training in the future, or now the present.
So my first intro into really training dogs where I was in a kennel environment is I worked with a American Bulldog breeder. We had 12 adults at a time and probably 3 litters of puppies a year. And it was a full-time working kennel, and we did iron dog competitions. So that was hang time, weight pull, protection, speed, and obedience. So kind of like Schutzen or IGP ring, but more geared toward bullies and getting to show off their jaw strength and that lock that they have, and also their ability to pull. So I don't know why I fell in love. I think when I was, I mean, I still am this way a little bit, but I was a pretty rough and tumble girl when I was younger. And so for me, I was like, yeah, that's badass. Nobody, there was almost no women that would get in the bite suit. And I'm like, I want to learn. I want to do it. And they let me, they taught me, they coached me. And I fell in love with it. And then, from there, I loved high drive, high power dogs.
Lena.
And, yeah, that was always my dream. I mean, I had owning a Belgian Malinois was on my vision board since the age of 19. Definitely got the t-shirt. Definitely don't think I'll do it again. Definitely the best dog I've ever had the honor of working with. So
not another one ever.
The thing is if you get one, you have to be willing. It's a lifestyle. I tell everybody, they meet Lena, everybody falls in love with Lena, and they're like, oh gosh, I want a Malinois. And it's like, no, you don't. You want this Malinois that for the first 2 years, I put 40 hours a week in training on.
Yeah.
And so they are just such an incredible breed that you can do everything and anything with. Anything that I come up with, it's not even if we can do it. I'm just like, oh, okay, we're going to go do this now, So, but yeah.
Do you guys get many males out there?
Not too many. They're really, really rampant in the shelters out here.
I really hope you guys get a large push of them over at the I really just think you guys deserve that.
Because they're we charge double for mals because they're 5 dogs in one.
Oh God, I know it's a. Yeah, that's.
Can you tell us how doing that protection sport, has that influenced any of your training when you go? Because I remember there was a dog that you went to go help one time, and you're like, this would make the best protection dog. And like, how is knowing protection work on, how has that influenced how you look at dogs that you go when you visit them at the house?
Well, I always say if I go in and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this dog, I'm like, this client's in trouble.
Yeah.
Because I like them really, really high drive, really sharp. And that's not the dog for the average owner. You know, even myself, I'm like, I did it. I love it. It's so fun. I'm not doing it again. And I'm a professional. So I always say if I really love the dog, I'm like, oh crap. If Bobby loves the dog, we're in really good shape. He loves the super calm, balanced, sweet, just add water.
Yeah, I want no work. Carly wants all the work.
I was thinking about recently just buying Bobby a German Shepherd puppy and having it sent to his house. Just gonna go
Yeah,
there.
no, thank you, brother.
It's gonna be a super calm, big old grizzly bear though. Male.
We helped a couple of German shepherds like Blitz and a couple other ones, and I love them, but I don't. They're. I want a smaller dog. I want a dog that is going to have a longer lifespan, because I just feel like the big dog, the bigger the dog, the less lifespan. So
Okay, 13, 15. Well, how many years do you want? Maybe you should get it to
I
her.
had 18 out of Reg. I mean, but I just,
Wait, she was 18?
yeah. I had her basically for 14 years. She was 3.5.
Oh gosh, man, that's old. I did not know that's old, buddy. Hey, you're shooting for the stars with that.
Yeah, so I don't. I'd rather not tempt fate and get a smaller dog and
It's all
be
right.
able to have
You don't
him
get to.
long.
Sometimes you don't get to decide the dog you get, buddy. Don't
You
worry.
always get to decide.
I'm gonna tie it to your doorstep.
No, thank you.
So back to your question, Bobby. I think what's really cool about having the protection training and the experience is that it's actually the opposite of what we do, as Ben doesn't like to say, dog psychologists, right? Or practicing dog psychology. Our company is called Reward Calm Dogs, right? And training protection dogs is reward excitement and chaos and drive. And then after you reward that and you build the dog up to thinking that that is the best way to be, how well can you manage that dog, which is like a live wire in that state?
Yeah.
So there aren't like these dogs are, you definitely can balance a dog that does it, but it takes a lot more work to say you're going to live a good amount of the time here and get rewarded, but then we're going to reward you for being calm too, right? It's kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. However, what's really cool is that I got to learn how to really amp a dog up and bring out that drive. So like one thing that I'm really not a big fan on is prong collars. And it's not because like I have anything against any tool. I just don't find them to be effective in most cases for one of 2 reasons. One, either they're like some big chunky dull dog that they'll just bore right into it and they'll scratch their whole self up. Nobody uses them with the right timing and they just sore up the dog's neck. Or it ends up agitating the dog more than bringing the dog down. And that's one thing that you use in protection sport is to get a better bark, to get a little more agitation. We'll put a prong on, right? So there are all of these little things that we do in the IGP world that have,
You stay away from maybe at times.
Here, I'm like, all right, we're not going to do that, right? Because that's the opposite of what we're going for.
I think that's why me and you connected right away, though, because we kind of both came from backgrounds of not dog psychology, but training dogs, and we're like different world, isn't it? Like what the? I remember when I first met you, were doing some dog psychology with Bobby, and then you weren't 100% didn't drink all the Kool-Aid, and then when we went to Caesars though, that was a good time because that whole process of learning that there's many different ways of training a dog, but I'm sure you firmly believe too that dog psychology should be rooted first and then whatever other form of training. That was super mind blowing and eye opening though. Because I would say the obedience world, the personal protection world, doesn't think real highly of dog psychology. That's my
Well, because there's this acceptance of chaos and lack of balance in that world, right? It's like, that's my sport dog, or like, that's my working dog. It's outside in a kennel. It doesn't come in the house. I only take them out when I work them, right? And that's the life that these dogs lead, because they want them, on level 10 at all times. And I don't think that the dog has the best quality of life. Like, you see them when they finally get out of the cage, they're almost neurotic. So, but I remember the first time I ever talked to you was over the phone. And really? I remember Bobby saying, "Hey, call Ben. He did some protection," because I was like not wanting to give up IGP. And Bobby was like, "You got to give up IGP, because like we can't have this dog here with this live wire, right?" And so I remember talking to you and you being like, "Yeah, you really can't do that." And have a balanced dog. Like, you're gonna have to give that up. And I'm like, who are you people?
Did you give it up?
We gave it up. We did give it up. Now she does the narcotics detection, and our new thing is sheep herding.
Yeah.
So
I don't remember. I don't remember. I don't remember the whole conversation. I remember like really, I was like, all right, I think she might be doing, because it wasn't even what I would say balance training, right? It wasn't based, you did personal protection based off of just positive reinforcement, correct?
Yeah. And that was the one thing that I did want to do
which is
I really don't think that it's cool personally to put an e-collar on your dog. And, Larry, the favorite thing that Larry Crone says is, when you use an e-collar because a dog does something wrong, right? Like, your dog goes after and is chasing a car tire, and you make them think they died with that e-collar. Cool, because they really could die, right? They're doing something very wrong that's life-threatening. But when you're using the e-collar because they're getting something wrong, it creates confusion and anxiety. And that's what I would see a lot in this world. People wanting to have sharper obedience, a quicker, retrieve or whatever. And they're using e-collar to put the pressure on the dog. And I'm like, what's the art here then? Right? If your dog's so nervous, dogs are wanting to leave the field because they know they're getting shocked on the field. Like, I'm like, that's not the relationship I want with my dog. So I did as much as we did do, I did it with the zero pressure. I put no pressure on that dog.
Well, you can't see any pressure on the dog.
But I mean, it was really strictly, it was.
I agree with you. Yeah.
When
you told me that, I was like, shoot. I was like, because the only way I knew how to get out of it necessarily was more through a balanced style. And I was like, yeah, I don't think you can do that. And I remember like at one point I really wanted to not say the bad news, but I was like, oh wait, that style, I don't think you can actually.
But now, now being in both worlds, I definitely think that I could take another dog and I could balance the dog really well first, and then add the drive on top, and do it that way.
There's no way you can't. There's no way you couldn't do that.
But yeah, right now with what we're doing, we're good having a drug finding, sheep herding, puppy raising. That's really her strongest suit, is her puppy raising.
That's the best, isn't it? That's my the more and more I do it, the more and more I appreciate and utilize the dogs that I have. Even if it's not my personal dog, just the dogs I have around, like that's the truth. It's instantly the truth of how that dog is the projection of that dog and how it's gonna be, and in my mind, the process and everything. I can just see so much as soon as I see a new dog around any dog I really know. I can see it myself to some degree, but once you bring dogs around dogs, it's fast forward. It's a very fast forward. You can go a lot quicker with behavior and educating the owners on, hey, this is exactly what's going
on. And you have, just like we have, dogs that are repeat customers that come back, right? So like we call that our pack members, right? Because we know them really well. They respond to us really well, so we can use them as if they're almost with us full time. And it's beautiful because it's kind of like the pay it forward, right? There were dogs before them when they were in our program that helped them, and now they're helping the new dogs. And I think that's how it goes in the wild, right? Like, the one generation is shaping the younger generation, and then it perpetuates.
I think seeing that is probably one of the biggest incentives for me to keep doing what I'm doing, because I enjoy that so much. I love incorporating new dogs into the pack, and yeah, I love that generational kind of, I guess it's generational or yearly, or because I've
Yeah.
been, I guess now I'm going into my 12th year, so going on to my 13th year here. I've seen dogs come and go now, and people move, and new dogs come in, and yeah, so I like that. I think that's just crazy. The process of turning a dog.
Yeah. You've done so many different types of training, from, horse training to dog training, IGP and protection. And you are also a reward positive certified through Karen Pryor's program. Tell us about the things that you really love about what you learned there, and the things that maybe you don't think are maybe the best.
So, my whole motivation for doing Karen Pryor was I thought that I was going to be staying in the sport dog realm. And you can't really make a big living there unless you have a kennel and you're competing and you have multiple dogs going. So that way you can be going to nationals and regionals, and, you're kind of seen. And so, and then, then I met you and the rest is history. But,
Fork in the road.
but my whole motivation for studying Karen Pryor, which is a purely positive school, and it was pretty difficult. I tell everybody it was harder than getting my master's degree. And then I thought to myself, when I went to the final testing, I was like, maybe my master's degree wasn't that hard. And I was sitting there with somebody who was a doctor and was a psychiatrist. And she's like, this was harder than getting my doctorate. And I'm like, so they were very picky and very, they were just very, very particular with how things were done. It was a very good program to learn shaping. But the problem is that they completely pigeonhole every student that goes there. They brainwash them to be completely dogmatic, no pun intended, that you absolutely can never put pressure on the dog. And actually, even though you could never take the knowledge they gave me, I would not still be considered certified by them because of the things that I advertise and the way that I train. They would never allow their name to be associated with me. Because they believe it's like that evil. And for me, when I get called, nobody says, "Are you certified?" Right? They just know, word of mouth. You
help me, please.
You can help us, right? So the things that I think are really great about understanding shaping is it really helps you dissect a behavior piece by piece and see where it's getting lost, instead of lumping it as one big issue. But
describe shaping a little bit to us for people that don't know.
So if we were going to shape a behavior, what we're doing is we're putting something that we want the dog to do on a cue. And the cue could be anything from a hand signal to a whistle to a verbal cue to showing a prop. But when that cue happens, you expect the dog to do whatever physical behavior you have put on that cue. So, for instance, if we wanted a dog to go and open a refrigerator and bring us a water bottle, it starts with you standing in front of the refrigerator and the dog looking at the handle and you telling the dog, yes, that's what I want, and then paying them. So now they're like, ooh, something about this handle, I get paid. Then before you know it, now it's like, okay, they understand there's something about the handle. So I can go on to step 2, which is now they have to touch the handle, right? Because eventually they're going to have to open the door. So now I don't pay them until they touch the handle. Now they're like, okay, got it. It's about the handle and I have to touch it, right? Then we fast forward. Now it's you're biting the handle, but you have to pull. Right. And so you just slowly add more and more and more parts of the behavior until you can literally be sitting on the couch and say, go get me a water bottle. And the dog has learned to do all of the steps from grabbing the water bottle to bringing it to you to closing the door. But that takes a lot of time to shape. And it's so fun and it's fascinating. And I think it's one of the coolest things you can do to bond with your dog. But in my opinion, that's not training. That falls in the affection category to me. If you're doing that correctly, it should be a game for your dog. Like there is not like Lena will stare at the equipment refrigerator we have in the backyard. And she's looking at it because she's begging me to bring out something so that she can work for it. And so they really enjoy it, especially dogs with a high seeking. If your dog is a high seeking dog, like you have a Malinois, for sure, like you've got to do something to help that brain. So it's amazing in that aspect. Where it's not amazing are the trainers who go and they enter as the professional. Somebody's feeling completely helpless. Like Ben, you just said this vet told them to put this dog. What?
Oh, you said feeling helpless. I said daily.
That Boston that you just said that you saw today, the vet said put the dog down. Right? Mm-hmm. And so they decided not to. The dog's living a great life. You came in, you're helping him understand the dog's behavior, and the dog will probably live a wonderful life, right? But in the purely positive world, because they are so limited on what they can do, when a dog is in red zone, you're not going to be able to influence them with something positive and give them a treat and pull them out of it. There has to be a pressure involved with the red zone, right? At the very least.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is these people hire these reward positive trainers. The reward positive trainer says there's no hope for your dog because the trainer can't do anything to fix it with the things that they allow themselves to do, right? And they end up telling them that either the dog needs to live in a zero stimulus environment. I've gone into houses where the entire front room, everything's closed, everything's dark. They have gates everywhere. And I'm like, what is going on here? And they're like, oh, well, the last trainer said that he just can't ever look out the window. So we just close all the windows and we gate every room with a window, and he can't ever walk during the hours when there's dogs out. So I have to take him out at 4 a.m. and then 10 p.m. I mean, now this was this person's life for a year.
People are saying this is lies.
And it's so sad because it's like that was the expert told them to do that. So they said, okay, the expert told me to do that. That's all I have to do. Right. So there's a lot of that. And then there's a lot of, we just need to medicate them. Like we need to dumb them down so much that they're these walking zombies that we don't need to put pressure on them because they're a shell of a dog at this point.
Craziness. And then it's just craziness.
And then the worst is when they don't know what to do with it and they're so limited that they tell them to euthanize, which to me is by far the most aggravating. So, it's interesting. Karen Pryor, they openly talk very, very negatively about Caesar. Like in the class, they advertise how horrible and awful he was, which actually was my motivator to go and learn about him. Because I was like, okay, so if this line of thought, this school of thought dislikes this man so much, they're not teaching me anything that this guy has to teach. So therefore I have to go learn the other side of the coin.
Yeah, by nature, opposition.
But most people are not that way. Most people are just like, oh, I've got this certification. And this is all we can do.
Who do you know that loves dogs the most? Caesar. Caesar loves dogs.
Yes.
Who loves dogs most? Caesar loves dogs. I've seen him from 100 yards away stop something or help a dog out. He goes, hey, look at how the dog felt. And they fix it. Yeah, he's just, that's craziness. It's just, they're just lies is what's being sold to everybody. It's nuts.
How about, have you had any mentors in the training world that have helped you along? And what have they taught you that has stuck with you that you feel is worthy of passing along on this podcast?
I mean, I've had the liberty and the opportunity to train with so many professionals, some that were amazing and some that were absolutely horrible. And you learn from all of them, right? You're like, I will never do that, right? Or, ooh, that was really cool. And so being a professional in the animal industry for 17 years, you see a lot of different things. But I would say like the one person, or there are a couple, and they ran the IGP club that I was a helper in. And Terry Fisk, she has just kind of been an all around dog person from showing. She had a, what do they call it? It's like a really prestigious thing when your show kennel has so many titles. Like it's really hard to get this name as a kennel, but it's evading me right now. So she did everything from that to protection to scent work. So she was a really cool exposure to the sport dog world. But her partner, Robert Gager, he is probably one of like the like last old like Mohicans of the protection dog helper world. And he really took me under his wing and took me through all the steps to really be a trial helper, like not just somebody that can throw a sleeve up, and then also a training helper. So really understanding it. And I just thought that was so cool that he took this random girl that had no idea what she was doing, right, and really like put a lot into her just out of the kindness of her heart. But the biggest thing that he was really big on, which I loved, was he said, you always, first and foremost, you always protect the dog. Like the dog always comes first. So if it's between you getting bit or you falling or whatever, like you throw yourself into the fire before that dog gets hurt. Because at the end of the day, this is our idea. This is our sport. No dog should ever suffer. And that really stuck with me and I thought was really beautiful.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks. I like that. Do you have any questions, Ben?
No, I'm just chiming in when I feel like I want to spice it up a little bit.
You did some good chiming, Ben.
Yeah, you're a very good chimer. I have here that do you think that service dogs suffer? Can you explain to me why you think service dogs suffer, Carly?
Well, I think it depends on what type of like service dog we're talking about, right? So I get calls all the time that telling me that, oh yeah, well, I'm looking for service dog training. And it's like, well, that could mean a million things, right? Like first of all, what is your disability and what service are you looking for the dog to provide? And 9 out of 10 times, somebody wants a dog that's calm enough that they can bring them and do everything with
Rubbing
them,
stone.
right? That's the whole, what'd you call it, Ben?
Rubbing stone.
The rubbing stone? Yes,
Yes.
kind of.
Touch that dog all day.
Yes, yes. And and they say I have anxiety and I'm not trying to I'm not saying that they're lying, there's nothing against that. But where I really have the problem is that I would say out of those 9 out of 10 times that somebody has anxiety and they want to take their dog everywhere, I would say 50% of the time they already have gotten the dog. And it's some dog that they rescued that now they think they're going to turn it into a service dog. And I said, that's the same. I go, first of all, I don't know if I can help you turn it into a service dog because I don't know how the dog is wired. So I said, this is the exact same thing as if you called me and you had a kid and you're like, hey, I just had a kid, really need him to be an NFL star. Like, so, can you
Or a doctor. Or there's a doctor.
Yeah.
Doctor.
He needs to be playing for a lease by 8. Can you make that happen? And so, what I find a lot is that people buy dogs and they don't take into consideration what the dog's life is going to be like living with them with anxiety, having to be in a lot of strange and new places. And a lot of dogs aren't wired for that. Like they are a more sensitive, anxious, nervous tendency dog themselves. So then you have the blind leading the blind, and who ends up suffering? The dog, right? Because the person's already stated, I have an anxiety problem. That's fair. Well, if you yourself live in an out of balance state, you cannot help your dog that is inherently wanting to be anxious and out of balance. And then they just go through life together out of balance.
Did you hear about that? I agree with you, but did you hear about, which I get about 4 calls a month about, can you make this random dog that's not qualified to be a service dog? Can that be a service dog? I go, Could I do it? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what you want. What do you want this dog to do? You know. Anyways, but is that you hear that I have that situation with the police department?
No, I have not explained that to her
Let
yet.
me let me unfold this.
Yeah,
So
explain the whole this and
it
the
ties right
show
into
that
it.
you're going to be a part of.
It's like he
Yes.
thought. It's like he thought about it. Is so police department reached out to me. They wanted they basically interviewed me to be the trainer for their service dog for the police department. So the police department is now going to do have a canine division based off of emotional service.
Right. So is it morale for the officers or is it morale when they go out on call?
Oh,
Woo!
sorry about that.
Where you been?
Great.
Great.
Trolling the excitement. No, but yeah. So I couldn't. What'd you say? Can you repeat that?
So is it that they want it for the morale and the atmosphere of the department, or do they
School
want to take?
system. So it's taken to school. It's like a police officer that works at a school. You know, in Illinois, I guess not everywhere across the country does the same thing. So in Illinois, they have police officers in their school systems. You know, in my area, and they already had a dog, and a tragedy happened, and the dog passed. The police officer went and got basically reached out to this company in Florida that is a rescue training facility, just obedience, doing service dogs. I don't want the balloons to come up, but is doing service dogs in Florida. And he went down there for, I believe, a week, got trained, and brought the dog back. But then, right when the dog got back, dog was really super hyperactive, kind of starting to get reactive towards dogs. Just it sounded like it was disrespect. You know, it doesn't. I'm not trying to throw the officer under the bus either. I'm not saying he's not dogs or he doesn't love dogs. I think he got trained to a certain point, and a week of training that probably took this company months to do was definitely not accurate for them to be successful with this dog and being across the country. So they decided to go with me, and my spin of it was is that, you know, do have a background in obedience, and, you know, will the dog have obedience? Will I teach you guys obedience? Yes, but secondary. And really the primary goal of what I would like to do with these in this situation is put dog psychology and all the wellness that comes along with it, you know, is my game plan. So I'm trying to, because right now there's only like, I believe, a dozen of them across the country that got the funding to get a service dog to kind of try it out. It's a new process they're trying to bring to the school systems instead of, you know, the typical canine dog. And I'm gonna do dog psychology, and and just a short script of it. And Angela from Deserving Dogs, I told her about the situation, and uh, she had been on the lookout for dogs for me. I told her, I said, I'm gonna have to just get an easy dog at first. I was like, you know, I don't mind turning a dog with some behavior potential issues, potentially to be an emotional service dog, right? I think a lot of dogs that could be qualified for it could do it, but not under the perspective of what they think that dog is going to be doing. Not there as a rubbing stone for people. This first dog we're going to get in is going to have to be a little bit of a stepping stone into that. My ideal of it would be, actually, what I would really like is for cops to bring, like, it sounds silly, but for them to bring really nervous, tense dogs around people and kids, and not to scare that dog, not to for that dog to get pet, for people to practice. Hey, when you're by this dog, we need you to practice slowing down. You know, it's okay. This is a place to come if you guys are feeling anxious, nervous, fearful, whatever it is. But this is circle, this space that we have around this dog is, we practice a certain philosophy, which would be dog psychology, would be, I think, the eventual plan. So it doesn't necessarily matter the dog that's there. It's that when people come around this officer, they're practicing a certain philosophy that we all, when we're hanging out with our dogs, or just really when we're with each other, that we all follow, right? So that's I'm having Angela send two dogs that out of those two dogs, we're gonna have one of them ideally be the candidate. But the reality is, like I told the officer, this process of us finding this dog um, is going to be lengthy for what you guys want. And what we'll probably do is, my speculation is that I'm going to come across a dog that he really likes and and I'm going to be able to convince him that, hey, this is the style of training that you need to do with this dog that you really like. And whatever the dog, whether it's really forward, whether the dog's kind of backwards, it's all going to dictate the same exact things we tell everybody to do with the dogs and the people what to practice around that dog. And then a goal may be for it to pet that dog, right? It may not be, you're feeling anxious, come over here and pet this dog, anxious kid, right? Sad kid, don't come over here and kiss this dog in the face. It can't be that. It won't be that if I'm doing it.
So you're taking these dogs from Angela and bringing them to these situations, or you're kind of using the dog that the police officer wants?
Yeah, I'm getting these dogs from Angela to rehome them and to assess them if they're qualified to be the canine dogs or the police officer's emotional service dog. So I'm really just finding a candidate right now that can be that bridge between dog psychology and the obedience world or the working dog world, right? That's what I'm trying to bridge right now. Go ahead.
Do you feel though that there really needs to be a bridge? Because I don't think people really know.
I think there's going to have to be some bridge initially, as my speculation. This dog's going to have to get pet like you. It's to some degree, even if it's the most minuscule amount or in the most effective way.
Right, but no, what I'm saying is, like, if you just want, I don't think that you need to make it a big thing. Like, okay, we're not doing obedience, we're doing dog psychology. Like, I think you just come in like, hey, I'm Ben Austin, I am the service dog trainer. This is what we do to get the dog there. And I would just move forward and say, this is how we're going to get this service dog to be able to be the dog that you want. You're making it more complicated than it needs to be.
I'm more just exposing it to you guys. That's because what
Gotcha.
they're looking for is obedience. Do you see what I'm saying? Like what that guy got was obedience. So I'm gonna have to at least transition into we're not gonna be doing the same things you did with this last dog to almost any degree. So it's gonna have to come. I'm gonna have to like.
You just have to have a little reset with them, basically.
It's going to have to be a red pill or a blue pill, I think, at one point. To some degree, especially once you go into, I think that, because the guy, luckily enough, is big into jiu-jitsu, so he's big. I know for sure if you're in jiu-jitsu, you have to be doing some form of wellness, and dog psychology and wellness is really, goes hand in hand. So does jiu-jitsu. So I think he's going to be with the program of, trying to create a little bit more calmness around this dog, slowing people down. I think people that are really emotionally out of balance, like process of like, all right, come take a walk with me and this dog. A different process of how they did it with that other.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you? You're right, Carly. I have to definitely be more sure-footed about going forward and just saying, this is just dog psychology.
No, you don't even need to call it dog psychology. You could just come in and say, hello, I'm Ben Austin. I am your service dog trainer. This is how we're going to get the dog there.
Yeah.
Because you're the expert. They're calling you because they don't have the answers. What they're doing isn't working, or they wouldn't call you.
Yeah. There's a greeting event going on up there I can hear.
Anyways, we're at an hour. Yes. Go ahead. Your final thoughts?
But anyways, it's a cool opportunity, and I definitely would like both your guys' opinions on a couple different strategies. Because the strategy, real quick, just to think about, this is the real food for thought, is we had to have strategies, training protocols for that dog that involve emotional service. But I can think of them, and I know I have a couple in my mind, but little tasks this dog could do. Does that make sense?
Definitely. Yeah. We'll definitely get involved in that. So we're at an hour. So thank you guys for watching, and say hi to your dad for me.
I will.
And we'll see you guys later.
All right.
Thanks again, guys. Bye. All right.